Hi guys! Happy New Year! I hope you had a wonderful holiday season and a wonderful start to the year of 2014. In case you hadn't noticed, I got a new camera. It's a Rebel T3. It's really awesome. The picture quality is phenomenal. My only regret is that it doesn't have a viewfinder. When I asked for a camera, I probably should have mentioned that I wanted a viewfinder, but whatever, I can make do. So today I'm telling you my top 13 books of 2013. I read 48 books this year, and it was really difficult to make a top 13 because I read a lot of really good ones, and then I read a lot of books that were okay, but I didn't know if it would merit them being in a top 13 video. Now these books aren't necessarily in ascending order, but as we go up the list, there's a reason that some of the books are higher up than others. Number 13 is Transformations by Anne Sexton. Anne Sexton is a poet, and this is a book of poetry fairy tale retellings. There's Cinderella, Rumpelstiltskin, Sleeping Beauty, and they're all so gorgeously written and kind of eerie. My creative writing teacher turned me on to Anne Sexton, I think, last year, but I hadn't read much of her work, and this is the first full book of hers that I read, and I enjoyed it so much. It really makes me want to read more of her work and more poetry in general as well. At number 12, we have The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath. The Bell Jar is the story of Esther Greenwood, her descent into madness, and her eventual admittance to a mental institution. This book takes place in the 60s, so if you know anything about mental health in the 60s and how mental illness was perceived and how mental hospitals were run, you know this is a pretty heavy read. It was very dark but very poetic. The way it was written just made me want to read more. This is Sylvia Plath's only novel, so I really want to read more of her poetry in the coming year. Number 11 is Every Day by David Levithan, which I don't have. I actually borrowed it from a friend. Every day is the story of A, who every day wakes up in a different person's body, and eventually A meets a girl and falls in love. I read this book way back at the beginning of the year, like a year ago in January, and it was phenomenal. It really made me question how I perceive gender and how I perceive people. The way the book is written, it's just right. When you read it, something just feels right about it, and I really had an awesome time reading that book. Number 10, we have The Darkness Dwellers by Kirsten Miller, the third book in the Kiki Strike series, which I also don't have because I loaned it to Ramsey and she hasn't given it back to me yet. Ramsey actually got me interested in Kiki Strike when I was in about 6th grade. It's the story of Annika Fishbein, and she meets this girl named Kiki Strike, and long story short, they get some Girl Scouts and they discover a city underneath New York, and there's adventures and intrigue and like sabotage and royalty, and it's really awesome. What's really cool about The Darkness Dwellers is that half of it takes place in Paris, and I also like that within the book, Annika gives you like helpful hints and tips for skills if you want to be a girl super spy or just like a more intelligent female, and it's so fun to read. It makes me want to go out and have an adventure and dress in all black and go kick some butt. It's just awesome, and it was a wonderful conclusion to the series. I really think those books should be made into movies. At number 9, we have The House of Hades, which is the 4th book in the Heroes of Olympus series by Rick Riordan. Can't even tell you how long I have been waiting for this book. For those of you who aren't familiar with the Heroes of Olympus series, the spin-off of the Percy Jackson series, which follows the life of Percy Jackson when he finds out he is the son of a god, and that is basically the entire Percy Jackson series and the entire spin-off series. What's cool about the spin-off series though is that there are so many different and diverse characters, and you get an awesome, tragic, like really fleshed out backstory for every single one of them, which is one of the reasons this series is so good. I'm still in like my Percy Jackson fan art phase, and my sister keeps sending me photos, and it's just so many things happened. I have read so many like adorable comic strips going off of this book. At number 8, we have The Joylet Club by Amy Tan. This was a present from my friend Sarah. I've actually read like 3 different excerpts of this book throughout my high school career because they always have excerpts of this book in English textbooks, and every time I read one, I just wanted more. The Joylet Club is the story of 4 Chinese women who immigrate to America and the stories of their daughters, and it sort of discusses the generation gap and the different ways of thinking between the mothers and the daughters, and you get perspectives from all 4 mothers and all 4 of the daughters that are major characters. I love cultural fiction, I love Asian culture, and this book just spoke to me on so many levels. It's really sad, but it's also really beautiful, and it's about motherhood and like family, and it's just really beautiful, and I loved it a lot. At number 7, we have Fangirl by Rainbow Rowell, which I also don't have because I borrowed it from the library. So Fangirl's the story of Kath, a huge fan of the Simon Snow series, which is like the Harry Potter series of this book universe. Kath writes fan fiction, and she and her sister are huge members of the fandom, but when they go off to college, they kind of grow apart. Ren wants to be more independent, and Kath is struggling with being her own person without Ren, and also finding herself, while also writing one of the most popular fan fictions in the entire world. It's super fascinating. It's really nice to read something about the internet that's truthful, because so often you get articles about like internet life or like fandom, and people don't really understand what's going on. Rainbow Rowell definitely understands what's going on, and she respects what's going on, which is something you don't really get when journalists write about fandom or people who spend a lot of their time on the internet. So that was really refreshing. Also, it's just so cute. Oh my god, it's so cute. At number 6, we have The Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger. I don't really know what to tell you about this book, except that it really speaks a lot about adolescence and the loss of innocence, and there's so much really great symbolism in here that I really love examining. It's a book with so much meaning, and I really enjoy reading it. I'm not really going to tell you what it's about because I had no idea going into it, and that sort of made it all the better. But it's about a guy named Holden Caulfield and what happens to him. So just read it. I don't think you should go through life without having read this book. So just read it. At number 5, we have The Diviners by Libba Bray. This is one of the best books I read this year by far, which is why it's in my top 5. It takes place in 20s New York. It's got a bunch of different characters that get really awesome backstories. There's a cult, and there's supernatural, and there's murder, and it's the first in a series, and the second one's coming out next year, and I'm so excited. You should definitely read this book. This series is gonna blow up. It's gonna be so awesome. My only complaint is that this cover is amazing, and I'm pretty sure they had a cover change, and I'm pretty sure that I hate it. So, you know, that's like a shadow on my happiness. At number 4, we have The Moor's Last Sigh by Salman Rushdie. Ramsey and I both chose to read this book for our optional AP English read over the summer because everyone was reading Wide Sargasso Sea because it was the shortest. We were like, we're not going to pull that. We're going to read something different. So we picked The Moor's Last Sigh, and I am so glad we did. It's the story of Moore, who ages twice as fast as everyone else, and his really wealthy family and their backstory and all the things that cause his family to kind of fall apart. And it's told so beautifully, and there's all this wonderful like Indian culture in here, and it's just, and it's a turbulent, emotional, gorgeous read, and I loved it so much. I want to read more of Salman Rushdie's work because this one was beautiful. It's a big exotic folk tale. At number 3, we have The Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian by Sherman Alexie, which I borrowed from my English teacher, so I don't have it. Part-Time Indian is the story of Junior, a boy who lives on an Indian reservation, and he decides that he wants to go to the better school for rich white kids in Riordan, and the novel follows the repercussions of that decision, him being ostracized by his friends and family and everyone on the reservation, what happens when he goes to school there, what he discovers about like people and himself, and it's gorgeous, and it's told through the eyes of a middle schooler, so it has a kind of childlike innocence, but it's also bitingly sarcastic and like kind of bitter, and it's so awesome. Oh, I almost cried reading that book. It was beautiful. Number 2, we have Memoirs of a Geisha by Arthur Golden. My friend Sarah got this for me for my birthday. It chronicles the life of a girl who is trained to become a geisha and sort of the trials and tribulations that come with that, and sort of what all is behind like that facade of a geisha and what happens. It's historical fiction, it's also a romance, and it's just beautiful. It's a very rich novel. The way it's written is very rich. It's like red velvet cake. It's like eating red velvet cake when you're reading it. I haven't seen the movie yet. I really would like to, but reading this book was an experience in of itself. It was beautiful. Also, it was amazing seeing like what a geisha is and what these women went through, and it's just it was so good. This is awesome book, so good. And number 1 on my list, and number 1 for a reason, is Into the Wild by John C. Krakauer. Into the Wild is a nonfiction book. It's the story of Chris McCandless, who gets rid of all his money, all his material possessions, and goes across the country, eventually ending up in Alaska where he dies. And the book sort of backtracks through Chris McCandless's life, the people he touched, what he did, and why. And it's so poignant and beautiful. I cried when I was reading this book because it says so much about understanding people and like the desire to be free and the desire to make a difference in the world and the desire to kind of know that what you're doing has an impact or know that what you're doing has meaning. And it's, I cried. Also, what I like about this book is every chapter starts with like snippets from books that Chris liked, stuff he underlined, or books that sort of follow the same state of mind that he had. And it's just, oh my god, favorite book. One of my favorite books ever. It speaks volumes about human condition and the human character. And I think you should read this because it's so awesome. I also saw the film and I was blown away by the film. That probably one of the best film adaptations I've seen in a very long time. So those were my top 13 books of 2013. This was a pretty good year for reading for me. I really want to do even better next year and read even more awesome books. Let me know in the comments if you've read any of these books and what you thought of them. Also, let me know your top 13 of 2013 or link me to your video if you made one in the comments below because I would love to see what you guys have been reading. Thanks so much for watching and I'll have another video for you guys soon.